I know I was born for this. I know I was born for this. Don't care for the critics, my words are life physics, a force that they can't stop. They just don't get it, I think they forget I'm not done till I'm on top. I know I was born for this. I know I was born for this. I believe we can write a story.
What if I told you there are like a million ways that everything could have gone differently in my life? Would you believe me? So I talked to you previously in an earlier video. I talked about my adoption story. I got to go back on that again because I don't think people really understand the chaos that was, or how I came into this world. I think I talked about my childhood. I talked about why I eventually joined the Navy. But one period of time that I haven't yet spoken too much about is the period of time after I was on recruiting duty and up till I went to a float training group, San Diego. And so I want to speak about that a little bit today because there was just so many important things that happened during that stage of my life, Erica's life, our family's life, as we tried to figure out just this journey we were on, right? Trying to figure out this whole Navy thing. So just for context, right? I've been on recruiting duty since 2000. I had been there for 9/11. I had been there for Erica and I getting together, eventually getting married, and then it was time for me to get orders. In those days, what you had to do was you had to contact the detailer who was in Tennessee, and you had to let them know what you hope to get. And it was three things. It was typically going to be a location or a type of a duty station, right? Or like a specific job. Rarely was it going to be all three. Now, mind you, my first ship was in Sasebo, Japan. I had came in the Navy undesignated, just as a reminder for everybody. I'd been in the pit for the majority of my time on the first ship. So even though I was a damage controlman, which was, again, emergency responder, firefighter, all that other stuff, I'd never really done the job. And then recruiting duty. And recruiting taught me to be this salesman. They taught me to be this marketing person. They taught me to be real personable, be able to talk to anybody. But so they made me a better sailor in some aspects, but I had not gotten the chance to get better at being, let's say, a D seaman. Even though what I would say is recruiting really helped to get me out of my shell. And when I get back to the fleet, that's going to really be significant because I have to be a public speaker as a damage controlman. I don't have to be a public speaker as an engineer, but as a D seaman, that's going to be crucial. So I called the detailer up, and Erica and I had spoken about it, and she was supportive of me wanting to go to the West Coast. I wanted to go to San Diego because my family is originally from Utah. My mom and my dad were taking care of my little sister at the time and her kids, and I wanted to be closer to them. And San Diego was the closest thing to that point. I had just recently decided that I was going to stay in the Navy. Uh, like a lot of young people, I wasn't sure that the military was going to be a long term thing. And I had just recently decided, you know what? I'm marrying Erica. This is all I know. This is all I got. I'm a second class petty officer, so I'm an E5. I'm going to go all in on this Navy thing and we'll see how far we can take it, right? Highest pay grade wins was my thought process at the time. So I call the detailer up and I'm basically like, look, I'll take whatever you got in San Diego. And could I get a C school? Could I get a school of some sort going to San Diego? Mind you, I've never been to A school. I struck my job. I worked my way up through the chop chain on my first ship. I did all the requirements and things that I had to do. I got my surface warfare pin and I took the test and I made rank and I got my rating. I got my job in the Navy, but I had never been to a formal school yet for damage control, except for like the basic shipboard firefighting stuff. And so I wanted to go like to the chemical biological school en route to my first ship. And the detailer says no. The detailer says, "No, you can't do that. But I will send you to the USS Ogden in San Diego." And it was another amphib. And at first, I wasn't sure I wanted another amphibious ship. It's a blue green ship. We call it that because the United States Marines ride these kinds of ships. That's the kind of ships that we bring the Marines on. We're the blue green Navy, the Gator Navy. I'm very proud to be a part of that Navy, by the way. But this at this time in my career, I'm not certain I want to do another amphib. I'm thinking maybe I should do like a destroyer or a cruiser, but I'm also worried because I think I get seasick and I'm kind of worried how it's going to ride. We'll get to that, right? But the Ogden, what's unique about that name is I was born in Ogden, Utah. The USS Ogden is named for the same person that Ogden, Utah was named for. So I said, all right, God, that's a good connection. Let's do it, bro. So I take the USS Ogden orders and I get my orders. I check out of NRD Miami or Navy Recruiting District Miami. The plan is to leave my wife Erica in Florida because my ship is already deployed and they're already in the Persian Gulf. So I'm going to be flying to meet them. So I remember I fly to San Diego. Never been to San Diego before. My best friend Troy at the time, I've got two best friends. Well, really three, counting my boy John. I got John Lefty, and I've got Troy. Troy at the time is living in San Diego, and so Troy picks me up at the airport, takes me to his house in IB, and he is. You wouldn't think he was in the Navy. He was in ABH2 at the time, but it was his house was wild, so I couldn't be there. Um, Ended up taking a couple of days off with him, got a place to stay on the base, uh, flew eventually over to Norfolk. And then from Norfolk, I flew to Bahrain. And then from Bahrain or the Middle East, they got me to my ship. I never forget. So I get to the ship. It's easily 1, 2 o'clock in the morning shipboard time. Now, mind you, I have not been on a ship since June of 2000. Now it's October of 2003, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, damn near. I've been traveling all night. I've only had one ship so far in my career, and I've got two sea bags. Right, I've got two sea bags, which is pretty much always what I carried when I traveled. I would take two sea bags and a garment bag, right? And the garment bag was what I would carry on the airplane. So I remember I'm walking on board the ship and I'm following the messenger, and they're taking me down to DC Central, which is the Damage Control Central, which is where there's watchstanders awake 24 hours a day, and they can help me get me squared away because it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm the new DC2. And as we go into this P-way, I stand in a long hallway on the ship, and there's this guy and behind this door, and it's a door that has half of it's open, half of it's closed. And I can hear this guy say, "Hey, are you him? Are you the new DC2?" And I was just like, yeah. And he was like, "You are so effed. You are so effed." And he's like yelling that at me from down the P-way. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what is that? Okay. Hi, I'm Gary, right? DC2 Wise. Uh, nice to meet you. So I meet the DC2. He was a good guy, right? But he had been waiting for me. Let's just put it like that. He'd been waiting for me. And then I will tell you in life, typically when the people find out a new person is coming to the team, before they even really know about you, they're going to start their preconceived ideas as to what they're going to do about you or what they're going to do with you. And I've seen this throughout my life ever since that portion. It's when I really, because I remember when I came back to this ship, now I'm actually thinking like, okay, I'm going to make this Navy thing work. I was good at it when I hated it. How's it going to be now that I decide to apply myself to it fully? So here's this guy telling me I'm effed, but what he don't know is I've already told myself like I'm so glad they're on deployment. I cannot wait to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the next 4 or 5 months to get everything I got to get done to learn my job. So by the time I get back to San Diego and I get my wife to San Diego, now I can be focused on my family and the ship, right? I was excited to have 4 to 5 months on deployment. And yes, it's after 9/11, and yes, it's 2003, and yes, there's a lot going on, but I'm there for it. Like I'm super into it, right? Let's go. And so when him telling me I'm so effed, I'm just thinking, let's see how it goes. They get me squared away that night. The next day I wake up and everyone's pretty much gone. Everyone's on liberty, right? Which means they're all out in Bahrain, or I actually think we were in Jebel Ali. I don't remember if it was Bahrain or Jebel Ali. I get it confused. But they were on liberty, and I just hung out around the ship, and I worked to learn where the different shops were at. We had a damage control shop, which is where we would do all the firefighting gear maintenance, right? So the self-contained breathing apparatuses, the aqueous film forming pumps. We had HPLF stations. It's the firefighting agent we used to fight a lot of our fuel fires. Anything that's on the flight deck. That's where they did like the CO2 flooding maintenance out of the aqua. We had deep vat fryers and the galley that did maintenance out of there, and then of course all the repair locker gear. So this is a big part of our job. That's one shop. The shop right across from that is the machinery shop. So it's the MR shop, and that's where they have like lathes and all kinds of really cool machining equipment. And that's where they would fix all kinds of random things. They would make all kinds of cool parts. The MRs are phenomenal technicians. They can make almost anything. We had the whole technician shop, which is the HT shop or the welding shop. And that's where they did all the sewage, all the brazing, all the welding, all the pipe fitting. We owned, as the damage controlman, as the repair division, we're all in one shop, right? The HTs, the MRs, and the DC men. We owned all the ship's sewage system. We owned all the fire main, all the firefighting water. We owned pretty much every pipe on the ship, right? Let's just be honest. And then we had one more shop, which is called the DCPO shop or the ER9 shop. And that was the only shop without any sort of air conditioning. I mean, the first time I ever went down there, I walked in and it was just trashed and probably about 107 degrees. It was super hot down there. It wasn't meant to be a shop. It was supposed to be a storeroom that they had converted into a shop. But it was knowing what I now know about the Navy, this was supposed to be a storeroom, right? It was not meant to be a shop that people actually worked in. Or like there was no air, the air conditioning didn't work. There was no air. It was not good. But anyway, I digress. Uh, so after the first couple of days, I didn't meet the chief, right? I didn't meet the officer. Of course, everyone's on liberty, so I'll let that go. I did meet the DC-1, so I met the LPO who was leaving in the next 4 to 5 months. Or at the end of the deployment, he was leaving, um, but he was excited to meet me and get me on board. And I remember the ship got underway. And I did like my basic in doc, my basic welcome to the ship training, because there were several of us that came and met the ship on that day in that port visit. After I did all of that, did all my welcome aboard stuff, started working up in the DC shop. And that was my goal. My goal was to work up in that DC shop because I had done the DCPO, or I had done the portable damage control maintenance in the other shop that where it's hot and it's kind of trashed. I've done that before in my past ship when I worked as a collateral duty. I wanted to be in that other shop that which is more current, where I could learn more about my job. And that's where all the other DC men were. Down in that DCPO shop was where everyone that was essentially sent TAD to the division, where TAD is people are temporarily assigned duty. And I think I told you on a previous video, but you don't usually get the people they want you to have. You usually get people that are not very good. Let's just be honest. We don't give up our best people. I will tell you, I own it too. When I was having to give TADs, if you were a strong performer, I was keeping you. If you weren't the best, you were probably getting the opportunity to go work somewhere else. It's how it would go, right? And so I really was working the angle with the DC-1 to stay up in that other shop, that upstairs shop. And part of that was because the DC-2 that had greeted me that night was currently the work center supervisor for that DCPO shop, or that portable damage control gear shop. I really didn't want that shop. I really didn't want to have to take over after him. I really didn't want to have to deal with that energy or whatever was going on down there. And after not even 2 or 3 days, the DC-1 was like, "I'm going to keep you up here with me," right? Because he recognized very quickly that I was going to be a hard worker, I'm a critical thinker, and that I was locked in. And I'd only been in the Navy at this time just right about 6 years, right? The other DC-2 that was down there in the DCPO shop had already been in the Navy 12 years. So twice as long as I'd been in the Navy, he had been in the Navy. And DC-1, I believe, had been in the Navy about 17 years. So he had some seniority on him as well. Then there was probably, I'd say, 7 to 8 other sailors in the DC shop that were up there. But after about 4 or 5 days, I finally meet the chief, and the chief basically says, "Hey, man, look, I know that you don't want to go down to that DCPO shop, but I need you to go down there. He's done. He's cooked. He can't manage it anymore. It's a hard problem to have because your job is you have to manage all the portable damage control gear maintenance for the ship. So all the extinguishers, all the battle lanterns, all the valves. Like it's not supposed to be that way. I'll be very honest with you all. The United States Navy, this is one of the most challenging programs the surface Navy has to this day. The surface Navy, I can go on any ship, doesn't matter the class, doesn't matter, destroyer, cruiser, gator, doesn't matter. I learned this throughout my career. I go on any ship, you show me a damage control training team brief, you show me a zone inspection, and you show me a DCPO training, and I'll tell you that culture of that ship. Those are all I need, those three things. Those three indicators are all I would need to make an assessment of that ship because for the surface Navy, I know how complicated it is to do those three things well, right? And on this ship, their model of how they're trying to manage this program is just fundamentally broken. And I don't know this now at that point starting it off. I've learned this throughout my career, and it's through this next period of time that I'm on that ship. But I can tell that when I walk in the shop, I go down there to tell him that I'm taking over and he can leave, and the shop is just destroyed. I mean, I don't blame him. It's 110 degrees down there. It's not the pit. It's not like we're in the boiler room, right? This is supposed to be your shop. Sailors are asleep all over the deck, papers trashed everywhere, parts everywhere. Just the place is a mess. And my strategies is I've learned how to take over new shops because I've done this a lot in my career since then. Is number one, I get the relief. I have the person tell me what they've got to tell me. And then I say thank you because I'm going to check it all again anyway. So just tell me what you got to tell me. No harm, no foul. You get out. I'll verify it. The good news was he wasn't going far. He was just going to the other shop. He still had a year left on board this ship. So he wasn't going far. Hindsight 2020, he probably wishes I hadn't relieved him, but it also was one of the biggest breaks of my career. At the time, I was thinking this was a huge setback. I was thinking, oh, well, here I am once again. I didn't get a school, right? Now I'm getting put back in the DCPO shop to work with a bunch of people that don't even want to be in the Navy. And I'm doing the same old maintenance that nobody wants to do and whatever. But you know what? I'm optimistic. I'm going to make it work. Step one, my first thing I always do, number one is we field day the shop. So I tell everybody we're emptying the shop out. We're throwing everything away that looks like trash, crap, and we're cleaning this whole shop and we're getting it all squared away. By the end of that first day, I probably already fired 4 or 5 sailors. I only had about 10. But as they started giving me attitude, I just started sending them away. Like, what were you from? I don't want you. Go back where you came from. And I would keep the 4 or 5 that actually were not giving me a problem. They weren't arguing with me because, of course, I'm disrupting the pattern, right? I'm the new second class petty officer, and what? We're gonna clean the shop? Yeah, I'm not working down there. That's not what my shop's gonna look like. We were painting. I had a I redid the whole shop in like 4 days. And the ones that stayed helped me. All right. And I got rid of those other 4 or 5 because they just were turkeys. And they were all older than me in the Navy. I'm 6 years second class petty officer. Most of them are like 10, 11 years in the Navy. But hey, you know what? You don't got to work with me. You don't got to like me. Good luck. Figure it out. Away we go. After that first week or two, I remember I'm starting to get my hands around working the computer system, using the email. I'm learning how to schedule the maintenance. I'm figuring out how to do certain things. And I remember we're doing a force revision. And a force revision is where essentially you get a whole bunch of new maintenance for the next period of time. And what you have to do is implement that into your systems, validating that everything is still good and current and accurate. And then you'd have to get it approved by typically your chief, your DIVO, and the 3MC, who is the maintenance chief for the ship. We had to do equipment validations weekly, which means they have all the equipment on the ship and the computer system for the ship to write jobs or whatever it is, right? And our job was to go out every week and validate whether the configuration of the ship was the same as the computer system. This is in our Navy, right? It's just a freaking it's a Frankenstein system. It really is. But of course, ships like the Ogden have been around for a long, long time, like pre-Vietnam time. She's decom now, but in order for you to write good jobs, you had to have good equipment information. And I remember I'm working on this force revision, so I'm learning how to do 3M, and I'm talking to the 3MC, the senior chief, and he's like, "Why don't you go get the other DC2 and have him help you?" And I was like, "No, no, no, no. I just need to do this myself." I'd already fired a bunch of his buddies. I didn't need any problems there, and I'm like, I can learn this. I need to learn this. If you can help me, thank you. I appreciate your time. And then he says, "Oh, by the way, I need you to give me some equipment validations." So what's that? He said, "Well, I gave them all to the other DC2." I said, "What do they look like?" He said, "They're a bunch of papers." Like, well, I don't have them. I'm pretty sure I threw them away. He I didn't tell him that, but I'm pretty sure they were all over the deck of the shop, and I'm pretty sure we just chucked it all because I didn't think anything was valuable that was being used as matting on the floor of the deck, right? I chucked it. So he says, "Go get the DC2." I remember I go out to the flight deck because the DC2 that I had relieved is out on the flight deck, and they're hydrostatically testing the fire hoses for the upstairs DC shop. And I went out there and I was like, "Hey man, 3MC wants to see us." He was so bad. He was so angry. He was like, "What'd you say? What'd you tell him? What'd you do?" I was like, "Look, man, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out how to do this job. He's asking me about equipment validations. I don't have any equipment validations, and I don't have any papers or anything like he's talking about." Well, they were in the shop. I was like, "Brother, there was just a bunch of papers that were all over the ground that we were all walking on. Is that them?" "Yeah, that was them. They're gone. I threw them away." "Okay, I'll go tell him. I will go tell him that part. You don't got to go with me to go tell him that part." And so I go back to the senior chief, and I'm like, "Senior chief, I threw those papers away." I said, "I took over the shop. They were all over the deck. I didn't think they were important. They're gone. So I don't know what to tell you. Whatever I got to do next to figure this out, let me know. But they're gone." And the senior chief was like, "Where's the other DC2?" And I say, "He's on the flight deck. He's doing something, but this is my fault. I did it. He didn't. He doesn't know anything about it." He's like, "No, no, no. You're good." He goes out and goes find the other DC2, and I'm sure he levels him a little bit. That Later on that day, I get a phone call. I go back up to his office, gives me a binder full of brand new crispy equipment validations, says, "Don't throw these in the trash can." I said, "I won't." And this is me beginning this tour on board the Ogden, right? I've literally been there not even 2 weeks, and it is what it is, right? You're turning over the skeletons to someone else's closet, and you're figuring out what's wrong, what's right, what's broken, what's not going good, and I'm figuring things out. I get called up by the chief. He calls me up to DC Central. I never see the chief. I'll be morning. We have quarters. We don't see the chief. The Divo's there. The Divo is a DCA. He is an LDO. He's an ensign at the time. I believe now he's a Navy retired '05 commander. LDO. He was also a chief petty officer, DC type in his past life, and then he had converted to LDO. I didn't even know what LDO was at this time. And LDO, just so for those you listening to me, is a limited duty officer, which means you had to have been prior enlisted before you converted to the officer program. And the chief, I never see him. And the word on the deck plates is that he and the Divo, the DCA, are not getting along. Now, mind you, we have a separate division officer as well, who is a line officer who is coming out of the Naval Academy or ROTC, something like that, who is junior to the ensign LDO, who was a former chief petty officer, right? So this is pretty common in the Navy where these two gentlemen are not really seeing eye to eye, right? So the chief, his flex is to not be around. That's what chiefs used to do when I was younger. If they weren't getting along with like the warrant officer or the LDO or somebody, they would just hide away. They would disappear. They would do whatever they were going to do. And the chief's claim to fame was number one, looking back on it, now that I know a lot more things, he was a top ranked chief. So the DCA had nothing for him, right? Chief was already up there. He was a qualified EOW, which meant that he was standing watch in the pit on probably 6 and 12 rotation, which means 6 hours on, 12 hours off. So he had that claim to fame. The other word I understood was Chief was a little bit salty because he had applied for LDO and this other guy had gotten LDO and Chief had not, right? So there's that salt in the wound when they had both formerly just been chiefs competing for promotion to the wardroom, and the one guy got it, and the other guy didn't. The chief ends up getting it, just so you guys know. The more he ends up making senior chief and then converting over to the officer program. So God bless, good luck, right? Whatever. But this is the drama that's going on in this division at the time. Again, nobody's managing the DC2, who's just down there in the DCPO shop, fire people. Right? Nobody. I think I told you on a previous story. So when I fired the people, the chief calls me up and says, "Hey, I heard you fired so and so and so and so." I said, "I did." He said, "Well, just so you know, you're not going to get any replacements." Now, mind you, this is my chief telling me. He didn't tell me I couldn't do it because I'd already done it. I'd already done it, right? No takebacks. And it had been weeks since I'd done it. Uh, but he said, I'm not going to get you anybody else to cover for them or to backfill that. That's on you. Okay, fine. No problem. I don't care. Me and the other 4 or 5 guys that were still down there with me were doing it. And as a matter of fact, what I said was the only thing I do need is I don't have anybody from our division that's working for me. So can I get somebody from our division, or from the DC, from HTs or MRs to work with me as part of our team, because I need to be the management of this whole organization. I can't also be the maintenance person. And he got me a body for that. So I got a DC3 or a third class petty officer to come down there and work for me there. So that worked out. Arguably, by about 3 months into this, it starts to become visible to the crew, to the ship, that I'm running a much better shop than had previously been ran. We're getting the maintenance done. I'm not causing problems. But then a couple things happen. Number one, it comes to light that the PMS or the maintenance was not being done on the ventilation properly, because I was trying to figure out how to do it and nobody could explain to me how to do it. But it all been getting signed off for the last year or two. See the problem? I'm trying to figure out how to do it. Nobody can show me how to do it or even explain to me how to do it, but the people have been signing off for it. There was the filter cleaning, which is monthly, which is simple. That's nothing. But there was a lot more to it than that. What they had been doing was essentially just moving the checks to the right or to the left or deleting them and saying they didn't apply anymore. And when I figured all that out and I went to the 3MC, the senior chief, that caused a big problem. And that was a big problem for the chief, for the DCA, for the department head, for the previous DC2, because, okay, part of our installed firefighting damage control response capabilities is to be able to manipulate ventilation appropriately through configurations. You're telling me that we have not been doing the maintenance on this stuff. So what if we can't do it? Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Can someone help me figure it out? That was my thought process. So this is red flag, like on the play, number one. Number two is I do this spot check with the XO. We do a bunch of spot checks down in this shop. It's just all kinds of spot checks. And what I learned very early was it was just a song and a dance. right? The khaki or the chief or the officer that was doing the spot check was just trying to get their spot check done. My guy was just trying to get the spot check done and not get in trouble. So I would just facilitate the simplest, fastest, easiest thing for everybody, and everybody was happy. That's what I learned. Now, knowing what I know now, that's not how it's supposed to go, right? It's supposed to be they get selected by the person doing the spot check, and then the person has to. But that's not how it goes, really, right? Just being honest, it's just the maintenance program in the Navy is it is a mess. But it's the show that they say in 3M or in maintenance program in the Navy, they say it's not what you can show, it's what you can prove. Right. And that's what I'm doing as a young second class petty officer. I am just managing these weekly spot checks to keep my people to feel like they're not in trouble, trying to keep up with all these maintenance checks that we've got to get done, trying to figure out how to handle the things that I can't do because I don't want to just sign them off because I don't feel like that's the right answer. The guy tells me the old DC2 just says reschedule them. That doesn't seem like the right answer. And my gut's telling me that I just need to raise the questions until somebody can give me the right answer. Well, the answers that I'm finding out is nobody knows the right answer. Okay. Through all of this, we do a spot check with the XO, and the XO comes down there and he finds out that I've only got half the maintenance people I'm supposed to have in my shop. There's an instruction for this shop which says how many people I'm supposed to have. I have half that. He says, why DC2 do you only have half that? And I say, sir, it's because I sent the other half back because they're not good workers. They don't care to try. And I'm getting the job done with these 5 or 6 people. We're fine. He says, no, that's not fine. You need to have all the people. You need to be doing it right. All these other concerns are coming up. And I tell him, I says, sir, I don't believe it's the best way to run this shop this way. This organizational structure, I think is wrong. And he says, well, how would you do it? I said, well, my last ship, USS last ship, I explained to him how they ran it, which was essentially there was a coordination cell that worked where I was working at, and then they would coordinate with all the other surrounding parts of the ship to take care of their spaces for readiness to go to sea in all aspects. Because if you read the United States Navy Standards Organizational Readiness Manual, the SORM, it says the department head owns their spaces in all respects for readiness. That's to include material readiness. That's to include battle lanterns, emergency escape breathing devices, portable fire extinguishers, red lights, white lights. I mean, all of that piping, flooding, pipe labeling and stenciling and pipe handles. The whole thing is that department head's job, not some freaking DC2's job in the background. And I get passionate about this because for the rest of my career, for 20 more years after this period of time, I've been an advocate for this because I understand damage control is an all hands responsibility. And I understand that this is the first line of defense. And oh, by the way, ownership of the ship is everyone's job, but the department heads are responsible for portions of the boat. And when I was the command master chief, I would damn sure make sure that they own their spaces. It wouldn't be just all some DC2's fault in some shop somewhere. And so the XO says, all right, DC2, uh, give me a different instruction or a different way to do this, and I'll take a look at it. I said, Roger that. Went up, and I remember I went up and I told the DCA, again, who was an ensign, who was a former DC chief. And first, and I told the chief, the DCA and the chief were in the same, they were both in DC Central because DC Central also was their offices. They had desks in there, right? So I go tell them, I said, hey, I should a spot check with the XO. I figure I should tell both of you before you hear it some other way. I pitched the idea that we put the DCPO ownership in all of the other parent divisions, parent departments, and then I will coordinate all of the books and all of the check assignments and all of the gear and all of the parts, but they will coordinate the execution of the maintenance. The chief was pissed. The DCA loved the idea. So again, just showed you what I was dealing with, right? The chief was not happy about that, but the DCA, He was like, "Oh my God, DC2, what did he say?" I said, "He said to write the instruction." And DCA said, "Can you do it?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." And you know what I had done? I had already networked with other ships in our ARC, or our amphibious readiness group. I had already connected with other DCPO work center supervisors on the other ships via email. Again, this is me back in 2003, but I'm already learning the importance of networking because I learned very quickly that I'm not doing it any different than they're doing it. We can all have similar ways to explain things and to share information. So when I emailed them and said, "Hey, how are you managing this problem?" I got their instructions. And oh, by the way, one of the ships was already doing it the way that I wanted to do it. It wasn't rocket science, man. I could take his instruction, update it for our ship, make the departments match, make the numbers match, and run it up the chop chain. And looking back on it, I think I did know better, but I was pleading stupidity. I had walked it right up to the XO. Bam! Put it right on his desk. Sir, Dr. Osborne, doom, doom, doom. DC2 wise, how's this for an instruction? It should have gone through the DCA, through my Divo, through my department. It should have done all that. But here's what I now know: the XO is the 3M officer for the ship. His job is to make sure the maintenance is being done for the whole boat. Okay. The DCPO program is one of the most important programs when it comes to maintenance on surface ships. If that program fails, the 3M program is probably going to fail. So that XO had a really vested interest in my finding a way to be successful. I At this time I have no clue about all that. Now I know all that with all my other experience. But at this time, I'm just trying to figure out a way to shift this problem because I just can't do all this maintenance with these 4 to 5 guys, and I cannot keep just dealing with the people they're gonna give me. That doesn't make sense to me, right? I give it to him, he reads through it, my man gets it done, gets it signed out, and I wrote in this instruction that the DCPO for every department and division was going to be the LPO of that division. So I will never forget when this starts to happen. We have mustered all divisional LPOs on the mess decks. It was, and I, mean, I think it was me and the CMC actually, and we told them all that they all now essentially worked with me. Oh man, that was a great day. Talk about a game changer. Talk about just an innovative ship. But I'll also tell you, everything turned around that day for that ship because all those first class petty officers had, I was not on the damage control training team. I was running, I felt like the zone inspection program because of my job as the DCPO guy, even though that was the senior chief. And now all these first classes had a connection because of this DCPO program. And my pitch to them was to make the ship better, to help them get their people back, and they could manage what they were going to do Monday through Friday. I was just going to give them the assignments, and that was it. So I get all of this done before we get back home off that 5 month deployment. And that deployment, it was kind of vanilla compared to my next deployment. I'm not going to lie to you. Like the Marines were off the ship in Iraq, they were deployed. So I'm sure they were going through hell. But the Ogden, we didn't do anything too chaotic that deployment, right? It gets crazier later on during another time. We returned to San Diego with our Marines, and I will tell you, we brought back less Marines that went. Unfortunately, I've seen us lose people every time during those years, during my '03 deployment and during the '06 to '07 deployment. It's just a tough time. We got back home in '04. I went and got Erica. We drove cross country, and I'm still DC2 wise. And it's right about this time that I'm recognizing that I think I wanted to go officer, right? I'm seeing this DCA. I'm seeing how he's carrying himself. I'm seeing how he's making things happen. I'm appreciating the value he's bringing. Him and the chief and that pettiness, I'm not really feeling that. And I'm I'm pretty much decided that I want to become an officer. And I remember I got my eval that March of '04, and I got a very good evaluation. Um, it was for me. I didn't know that as an E5, I was going to get ranked in the department or whatever. That I had no awareness to those things, but I got a really good evaluation. And so I'm looking at my career, I'm thinking, hey, you know what? I was thinking about converting to Navy career counselor and getting out of the damage control, getting out of engineering. But now, hey, it's going pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. Maybe I'll try to go LDO and look into that. Right. Again, I'm trying to get to the highest pay grade. Well, I've got a problem. I need to make first class petty officer first. How do you do that? Well, get good evals. Hey, I just got a good eval. Next up, I've got to take a test, right? They offer the test twice a year. Well, I'm studying every watch. I'm studying as much as possible. I buy study guides. I'm invested in my studying for this advancement exam because I know that I've got to pass this test and I've got to do good on this test. I'm competing with all the other E5s in the Navy in my job for this advancement. Um, I remember during that next year, life was actually really good. It was just go to work. I had Erica and I had a condo. We bought a condo, which was worst financial decision of my life. I'm telling you guys that story another time. That was a tough one. Whew. But we learned the hard way. Uh, I ended up. I remember coming home one day, and Oprah was on television. I don't watch Oprah. But Oprah was on. Erica was at work at the time. She worked at Pacific Trust Bank. And I'm watching Oprah. And on this television show, there's the authors of this book called The Secret. Right. So this is my first exposure to the theology or the ideology of The Secret. And their thought process was essentially everything in the universe gives off a vibration. That this is what they were saying. And I'm listening to it as I'm making my lunch. Everything in the world gives off a vibration. Everything in the world correlates to the vibration that you're sending out, or it resonates or it responds to the vibration you're sending out, then the universe, essentially through the law of attraction, is going to bring things towards you that base off your vibration. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm listening to it. I think it's interesting, but I'm not sure. So I think, you know what? They said in this conversation that you should think about meditating or you should think about visualizing. So I said, okay, I'm going to start meditating or visualizing making first class petty officer and then making LDO. Right. This is what I'm going to do. And I used to PT every morning. I would get up and go into the ship every morning, bright and early, be on the treadmill running. Did that for the majority of my career. And I would go in, I'd be on this treadmill just running, and I could feel, the excitement of the captain saying my name. Congratulations, Gary Wise, you're promoted to DC1. I could feel the enthusiasm from Erica when I called her up and told her, hey, I made rank or I got a promotion or we're gonna get more money because so we're broke. Me and Erica were struggling financially back then. Bert was not making a lot of money, living in San Diego, Southern California. Oh my God. We were just living on Visa credit. It was tough. And so when I was looking at making that rank, it was like, oh my God, not is it only just a next step up in the food chain, but it's a significant pay raise, right? And it just I remember I did this for a long time. I, I'd say about 6 7 months of going in, running, visualizing. I'm gonna make LDO. I'm gonna make LDO. I gotta make DC1. I'm gonna put an LDO. I'm working on all these ideas, right? I'm constantly thinking about it, and I'm working my butt off. And I come in one day. I never forget. I come to the ship, and there's this Ian 2 who is a buddy of mine. Clark, I think was his last name. And Clark is on the mess decks. And the quotas had just come out that day for advancement. And he said, hey, Wise, do you see how many DC1s they're making? Now, DC1 is the next rank, right? I'm in DC2 right now. I'm trying to make DC1. I took it one test already. I didn't make it. So now I'm trying to make it on the next test. And Hey, you see how many DC ones they're making? And I'm like, no, man, how many? He said 7. That's like nothing, just so you know. That's like the last time had been like in the 20s. So now they're making 7. I'm like, 7D. Oh my God, man, I'm never making DC one. This is what I'm thinking. And it was later on that morning, the captain said my name, and I made DC one. And I made DC one when only 7 people made it in the entire freaking Navy. Your boy, your guy, was one of them. Um, I mean, I got the 97th percentile on that rating exam. God was freaking with me, man. It was just Ian 2 didn't make it, but I made DC one that time. And I remember I made DC one, and not only did I make it, but I was actually getting. I don't remember how it worked out, but I think I made it in June, right? So I took the March exam, made it in June, and I was getting my first DC one evaluation in November. Okay, why this matters to the story, because evaluations in the Navy significantly affect your promotion ability for the next promotion, because well, at least they used to. I don't know how it is now, but back when I was young in the Navy, the weight of the recommendation significantly weighed onto your promotion ability going up to the next rank. And I remember, so I got a new chief, and my new chief also didn't like the DCA, but I liked the new chief because his style was much more involved. He liked to hang out in the shop, which I now know is not always a good thing, right? Chief, be visible in the shop, but you don't need to be hanging out in the shop. You're not one of the boys, right? Go down there, do your thing, and then get back to the mess. You need to be in the mess. That's just my advice as a chief petty officer. I don't mean you should be sleeping in the mess. I don't mean you should be hiding in the mess. I just mean you should be as relevant in the mess as you are in your shop. That's my advice, right? Be relevant in both areas. Okay. And this new chief gets there, and now there's multiple first classes, right? When I made DC one, we got a new DC one that came to the ship. Actually, we got 2 more. So at this time, there's 4 DC ones. There was the DC two that I had originally relieved. Now he's a DC one. I make DC one, and these other 2 guys reported to the ship as DC one. I'll never forget the day I walk off the flight deck from getting promoted to being a first class petty officer. I got pulled into the machine shop, and my chief says, "Hey, you're the new LPO." Said, why am I the new LPO? I just I don't know how that works. There's 3 other guys that are senior to me. Well, the DC one that had just got to the ship that was supposed to become the new LPO had just got hit with what was called an individual augmentation set of orders to Gitmo, to Guantanamo Bay, because this is the War on Terror time frame, right? This is right around 2004-5 time frame, and DC one had just come from brig duty, right? So because he'd been to brig duty, his name was on the short list, and he had got flagged for a 12-month IA to Guantanamo Bay. And of course, everybody's just like, what the heck does that mean? And he only had like a week, and he was leaving. And because he was leaving, the chief wanted me to be the LPO over the other 2 guys, because he just felt like I had the more potential than they had, which he's not wrong, right? But I'm sure that was a tough pill for them to swallow. So I walked off the flight deck. Oh, and by the way, you're going to be the LPO, Gary, and still you got to run ER9, the DCPO shop. Nobody else can have. You've got to still manage that and be the LPO. Okay, I'll figure it out, right? This is an opportunity. Oh, by the way, there's also an HT one, and there's a new MR one, but I'm the LPO because I'm the got it. Check. At the time, um, I wasn't sure. Looking back on it, huge opportunity, right? And I made it work. So DC one leaves, unfortunately, and goes to his IA. And to this day, I still feel bad for him because that sucks, right? And the captain says, "Hey, I promise DC one, you're gonna go on this IA. When you come back, we're getting ready to go on deployment. You're not gonna go. I'll make sure." Of course, captain's gonna change command between those 2 points. So that's going to come back to haunt him later. But I'm the new LPO for the shop. Got it. We get through that next year, running things strong. I remember the chief tells me that I'm not going to make chief for at least 4 or 5 years. That's what he tells me. And I said, well, how does it work? You know, I don't know how does it work. And he says, well, you got to wait your turn. You got to wait your time. It's okay. I don't know. I don't know any better, right? I've just made DC1, and my section leader at the time was a Bosa Mate senior chief. Matter of fact, I got to reach out to Boats because I think I need to get him on a podcast. He is changed. He's a phenomenal human being. Changed my life. But I went to him and said, "Hey, senior chief, I just found out on my eval because I got an eval November 1st, my very first ever paid first class eval, and I'm the number one first class on the ship. I'm the sailor of the year, and I get all these accolades, right? And I'm like, how do I write this eval to best support all of these things that I got going on? And he's like, well, go get all your paperwork, go get all your stuff, and let's work on it. We worked on my eval to best support all those things. And you know what I found out later after, because I ended up making chief here very shortly after all this. And I find out later he was one of my strongest advocates in all the ranking boards because from him, the time him being my section leader, uh, he was stronger to support me than my own department even was. Because in engineering, unfortunately, they don't always support the damage controlman first up. Typically, they're more supportive of like the propulsion rates, the electricians, the mechanics, the engine man, the whatever it is. And I get it culturally, but I will tell you that the damage controlman, we've got an impact for the whole command, not just one department. And that's where I was really gaining a lot of ground. But of course, I find all that out later. Uh, so I get all these evaluations, I get all these great accolades. We go, the end of the 12 months is up. The DC1 comes back from his IA to find out he's got to go in deployment with us. I mean, what a soup sandwich. I felt so bad for this guy. Nobody's stopping that from happening. Knowing what I know now, that would have never happened to my guy. I promise you that. I would have stashed him somewhere TDY and taken care of his family. But nope, DC1 going on the deployment. So he comes back from a 12-month IA. He goes on deployment. We go to the Persian Gulf. This time it's '06. We drop all the Marines off. We go to Kayat and Abot, which are the two oil platforms that Iraq is using to transfer the oil from the country out to the tankers that are then filling them up to make money for the country of Iraq. That then, I don't know what they're doing with the money, but I just know that we had Americans on these oil platforms guarding them. And our job was to be there to help, number one, presence, right? In case some bad guys thought about trying to do something to stop the oil from flowing, to support the military, American military that was on these platforms with hot showers, with hot food, with trips to the ship store. And then, of course, we were training the Iraqi Navy. Okay. So we did that for God. I mean, I got an Iraqi campaign medal for this period of time because we were so close to Iraq. We were within that area and we did the certain amount of days that we got recognized for being involved in that Iraqi campaign. I mean, I was there. If you Google it, KOP blows up one day, right? We're doing zone inspection. I'm on the ship and me and the XO are on the bow of the ship and it just blows sky high. It just boom, right? And I remember we did the rescue and assistance team. We're out there with firefighting teams trying to help put the fire out, but we're not putting that fire out. That's an oil rig fire. You got to shut the oil off, man. But part of that response, a lot of us got recognized for that. Part getting people out of the water that had been gotten blown up and then jumped off that oil platform. It was a busy day, right? It was a very busy day. Probably deserving of its own story. I'm just not. It's just too deep right now. But very, very busy day. Another part of this deployment, we got taken off of Iraq and we got sent to go deal with the pirates off the Horn of Africa. So as you watch the news and you watch about these pirates and the Houthis and all this other stuff, I will tell you that back in 2006, USS Ogden, in corporation with other entities, right, was doing things to the point where we weren't even supposed to talk about it. We weren't, I mean, we would go months without any email, any communication with our families because of the things that we were doing in support of the global war on terror, helping to combat extremism and terrorism in the Horn of Africa. It was very, very interesting stuff. It was quite the deployment. And it was coming back off that deployment that I got promoted to chief petty officer. Uh, Huge deal, right? I took the test for LDO purposes only. I wasn't even up for chief, right? When I took the test, I took it for LDO. Remember, I'd had that eval, the great eval, and I was talking with the senior chief, and I was like, I'm going to take the test for LDO purposes. My first year as a first class. I'm paid. I'm not up for chief. What are you going to do? Well, after the board results came back, we're on this deployment, and they said, "Oh, you're eligible for LDO." I'm putting my LDO package together. Okay, got it. And the master chief, the command master chief, comes up to me and says, "Hey, Wise, why don't you want to be a Navy chief?" I said, Mass Chief, not up for Chief. So I'll put in for LDO. And if I don't get LDO, then next year I'll put in for LDO and for Chief. That's my thought process. Do you want to be a Chief or not, Wise? Like Mass Chief. I don't get the question. And by this point, my wife was the ombudsman for the command. Erica had volunteered to fill that gap for this deployment. Again, I'm running the DCPO shop. I'm the LPO for the repair division. I'm running the damage control training team at this point. Oh, and halfway through this deployment, after the chaos explosion, my chief gets pulled off the ship because they find out he's got diabetes, right? So now guess what? I'm the acting LCPO at the freaking time, right? I'm the acting chief now. And it's just an interesting opportunity, right? And when I'm going through it all, I just keep feeling like, oh my God, this is too much. And I just keep, I remember the day that Chief left, I got all the division together and I basically said, look, Chief's gone. I'm going to be the new chief. He had just taken all the power cords from all the TVs and all the shops. So I gave all the power cords back. I said, all right, you got all the TVs back, but here's the rules. You can only watch movies in the DC shop. You can only play video games in the machine shop. You can only watch sports in the HT shop. And nobody ever goes to the DCPO shop, which is my office, right? So whatever. It's 110 degrees down there. No one's going down there, right? I'm the only one that's sick enough to want to be down there. Nobody else wants to go down there. And that was how I set it up. And so I told him, I said, this is our opportunity to do it the way we've always wanted to do it because finally one of you, by this time I'd been on the ship for a little over almost 3 years. And we were all very close friends and we'd all become shipmates. And that was a pretty cool opportunity. And so we made a lot of good things happen at that. This is the same deployment, which if you watch previous video, we were off the coast of Australia when we lost half the mess decks during the unrep, right? I'll have to tag that video in the description, right? That's another good sea story. And coming back off of this tour or coming back off this deployment, we're getting ready to decommission the ship. I find out I make chief. Matter of fact, I make chief. Another one of the DC ones in my division makes chief. The one that went on the IA for 12 months, he picked up chief. And the HT1 picked up chief. So 3 of us in one division make chief. And actually 7 of us on that ship makes chief. So that's a pretty big deal, right? We had, and we were the last chief's initiation for that crew because again, or for that ship, because they were going to decom the ship or decommission the ship before the next year, right? So we got to be the last chief selectees for that ship. And I remember I had requested to go to RDC duty when I was a DC1. I was requested to go to be a recruit division commander. Here I was, Sailor of the Year, #1 EP, whatever that means to certain people. AJ squared away. I'd already been a Navy recruiter. I'd already been an undesignated fireman, maintenance man. I've now been a workshop super LPO. So now I want to go be a boot camp drill instructor because I think I'm building the best resume to be the best all around sailor. Oh, by the way, I'm applying for LDO, but you never know. So I'm acting like that's not going to happen. I remember I got denied to go to RDC duty because I had tattoo on my forearm. They denied me to go there to be at RDC. Now you can have full sleeves in the Navy, no problem. But in 2005, when I was trying to get orders off of Ogden, I got denied. And they were going to send me to Navy Recruiting District San Diego. And I was not happy. I was super upset about that because I'm like, look, man, I am just got off of a very successful sea tour. I do not need to go back to freaking recruiting duty. And the detailer is like, no, no, you're not going to be a recruiter. You're just going to work on the staff and recruiting. No, that's worse because in recruiting duty, when you're on the staff of the headquarters, you're really nobody, right? It's all about the recruiters. It's all about the production guys, right? DC One Wise did not want to go work on the recruiting staff after this successful sea tour. I was like, send me to another ship, bro. I will go to another ship right now. It's like, nope, nope, you got to go to shore duty. You're going to San Diego. Oh my God, bro. I remember thinking, oh, my career is over. Like, this is just going to be a waste of my time. I'm going to go from this great sea tour to, well, I make chief. I made chief. And look, part of it was, the whole tattoo thing because I had orders to go be RDC. I had the orders to go be RDC, but then I failed the screening because of the tattoos. And I remember my captain wanted to fight it. But I changed my mind about fighting it because I bought a house in San Diego and the housing market was about to burst with the bubble. And I couldn't sell it. I didn't know what to do, so I had to stay in San Diego longer. And so that was the whole point, right? I was trying to get something in San Diego. The guy thought he was taking care of me, sending me to shore duty in San Diego, but I'm wanting something that's going to keep me competitive and operational and all the above, right? So I make chief. Man, all right, God. So I make chief. I call the detailer up and I said, "Hey, I need to get out of those recruiting orders. And now that I'm a chief, I need to go to a ship and go be an LCPO at sea." And going through my initiation process, I really bought into the Navy's Chiefs Mess. Initiation for me, I mean, yeah, I remember coming up as a teenager, I was a part of street groups, street crews of people. I was initiated into my first organization at 12 years old, right? I got into another one at 15. Like, I'm into these ideas that once I'm initiated into something, I'm going to I'm going to push that line, right? And so now I'm a Navy chief and I want to go to the deck plates of a USS somebody and have that opportunity that I've been improving on board Ogden. And he says, no, can't do that. He says, but I can send you to a float training group San Diego. And I said, well, I got to get schools. I've never been to any schools to be a DC chief before. I'm a chief and I've never been to CBR school. I've never been to senior enlisted damage control school. Can I get a school? And he's like, you never been to school? Well, how are you all this ATFP stuff? Well, I had gone to force protection school as a part of the Ogden's crew. I'd gotten involved with the force protection training team when I was on the Ogden. So he says, well, I'm going to send you to ATG to fill a force protection quota. And I'm just like, oh my God, no, I do not need to go to a float training group San Diego and be doing freaking master at arms work or be a force protection guy. I'm a damage control man. I need to be doing damage control stuff. And he says, well, you need to talk to them, but you're going to a float training group San Diego and you're leaving like in 3 months. So I'm just like, oh my gosh. So another guy I got to get on my podcast, Senior Chief Brian Nelson. Brian, I'm gonna be calling you up shortly, bro. So I went over to a float training group San Diego, and I went to the damage control shop for Senior Chief Brian Nelson was at the DC Senior Chief, and arguably one of the most powerful people I feel like I've ever met in my career. I put it to you just like that. I mean, Brian had the juice. And I tell you that because I went up there and I said, Senior Chief, my name is Gary Wise, coming up you off USS Ogden. I'm a DC chief. I am a chief damage controlman, and they're trying to send me to force protection, ATG, and I do not want to go there. I want to come work for you. I want to become a part of the Float Training Group Damage Control Mobility Defense Shop, and I will do whatever it takes to come here. And Brian looks at me and he was like, "Are you serious? Like, are you serious?" Because I mean, it's actually a better deal to go to the force protection shop. I'll be honest with y'all, but I was all in on I'm becoming a master chief. I wanted to become a command master chief at that point, and I knew I had to make DC senior chief and DC master chief, and I just felt like being in force protection wasn't going to make me be a better damage controlman. I had to go to the damage control shop of ATG where I would get the chance to go on all these different ships and see all these different chiefs and see all these different ways to do things and figure out better ways to do my craft. And he says, you know what's awesome? Or how I remember it was Brian says, I've got a new DC chief coming who's coming from SEER school, and he does not want to be in the damage control shops. He wants to be in force protection. So if you are willing to come here, then I will have him go there and you can come here. And I said, yeah, let's do that. Let's make that work. And that's exactly what Brian did. There was another chief that they went and sent him over to force protection, DC chief, took me into ATG, and man, that's going to be the next video, y'all. That's going to be, I'm going to talk to you about my time at a Float Training Group San Diego. If you watch this video, if you listen to my sea stories, and I know I left a lot out, there's so much stuff that really happens during those years. I'll give it to you guys at different times or in different moments or different questions and answers or whatever it is. But I did want to give you some of the wave tops because during that part of my career, so many different things happened that I didn't project to see coming. So, for example, when I made chief, I just wanted to make LDO. What I was sending out to the universe, what I was focusing, what I was visualizing on was promotion, getting a new uniform, picking up the next rank. And what I will tell you is I got all of that by making chief. It wasn't about making LDO. And I never, ever, ever applied to go LDO. I found out going through the Chiefs initiation, that's really what I wanted. I really wanted to become a command master chief and eventually be doing what I'm doing right now. Like that was ultimately the vision. But I learned that throughout that whole journey. That ship took me from being a young second-class petty officer with a young wife who we were broke, thinking like, I just need to make this work, to coming off of Ogden as a DC chief and getting ready to go down to a Float Training Group San Diego to assess ships. And oh, by the way, I'm still pretty green, right? I'm still pretty green. I just got through with initiation and getting my anchors on, and here it is 6 months later. I'm now going to ATG. Looking forward to telling that story in the future. Thank you all very much for your time. I appreciate you. Thank you. And I will let you all go. I'm going to sign off now. Hope y'all enjoyed the story. Bye.
And I know I was born for this. I know I was born for this. Don't care for the critics, my words are like physics and force that they can't stop. They just don't get it, I think they forget I'm not done till I'm on top. I know I was born for this. I know I was born